Okay, girl. There you go. You ready? Hey.
Lovely daughter, yes, she did. Yes. Yeah,
Well, she
she's
was out with that
amazing.
flu. Ooh.
I know, she told me
You know
too.
Carol Wesley?
I don't think
This
so.
is Samara Lee. Yeah. Introduce each other.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. If I could have everyone take their seats, we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Rebecca Price, and I'm with the Nashville Public Library, and I want to welcome everyone here for tonight's Then and Now program, The History of Disabilities in Our Community, Living with Blindness and Visual Impairments. This series is presented by Vanderbilt University and hosted by Nashville Public Library Special Collections, which is home to two of Nashville's beloved community spaces, the Civil Rights Room and the Votes for Women Room. We are honored to host this series and extend a very special thank you to Dr. McShepherd Ray, principal of Martin Luther King Jr. High School, for hosting this program tonight. We are thankful to all of you here tonight and for those tuning in live on YouTube. As such, please be mindful that we are recording tonight's program. Before we begin tonight's program, let us be reminded that we occupy the ancestral and traditional lands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek nations. We are humbled and we honor all the ancestors of this land on which we meet today, from the elders who have gone before to the generations to come. We are now in our third season of Then and Now, where we have shared stories and built community with Nashville's diverse population. We started with a three-part series on Black Nashville, and we've met immigrant communities from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. As we continue our journey to learn more about our neighbors, we are now exploring and focusing on communities living with disabilities, whose stories are often overlooked or taken for granted. Tonight, we continue our journey with learning and welcoming Nashville's community living with blindness and visual impairments. It is now my pleasure to introduce Vanderbilt's Dr. Andre Churchwell, with us tonight in his role as Senior Advisor to the Chancellor on Inclusion and Community Outreach. Dr. Churchwell.
Thank you, girl. Always. Thank you, Rebecca. We've had a great time in these 3 seasons working with our partners at the Nashville Public Library and their Special Collections and Projects Office. And this is a continuation of those efforts. This is our 14th program in our series of Then and Now, as Rebecca has outlined. We've been examining the history of minority communities in Nashville because we needed to. We need to have those stories told, expressed, and for our Nashville community to understand that we have some unique communities that have been contributing mightily to the success and growth of this city. So this year we focus on communities with disabilities. As in our other programs, we feel that this group has not been given the public spotlight it deserves. This community, like many others, are part of this vibrant, growing city and contributed on a daily basis, and therefore needs to be acknowledged. This program is part of that process, I might add. Our first program in the series on December 3rd was on our community with physical disabilities. Today we'll focus, as Rebecca said, on our community living with blindness and visual impairment. As mentioned in the December 3rd program, this community receives services and support from a number of sources, services and support from not-for-profits, private philanthropists, and state and federal support, all assisted by leaders from this community and their many allies committed to their success. As mentioned, I'm a trained cardiologist, so my natural curiosity, vision, and lens and networks have led me to realize when I need help, at least I hope so, and I've sought assistance from many sources in putting these programs together, experts and leaders from the Vanderbilt Kennedy School, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and our Nashville Public Library partners and their network and connections. Our community historians also have assisted me in building this program and putting it together. They are Ralph Brewer, Superintendent Emeritus at the Tennessee School for the Blind, and Carol Westlake, Senior Advisor and Founding Executive Director of the Tennessee Disability Coalition. With their help, we identified community leaders who will share their remarkable stories of success, failures, triumph, and also resilience. Before we proceed, I'd like to ask our partner in this from Vanderbilt, Professor Samar Ali, Research Professor of Political Science and Law at Vanderbilt University and co-chair of the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy and founder of and CEO of Millions of Conversations. Now, how she finds time to come here tonight, I don't know, but I'm thankful she is. Samar, please share some thoughts with us.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Churchwell, and good evening, everyone. How are you? Good. Well, one of the reasons we started Millions of Conversations almost 10 years ago was because we felt that we needed to have more conversations, and we are talking sometimes at each other, and we have definitely millions of voices that are out there, but we kept hearing people say that they felt as if they were shouting out into the wind. How many of you have felt that sometimes, that you're just shouting out there? Clap if you have. And that what wasn't happening, and what they were missing was the conversation, was that ability to not just hear, but to listen. And what happens when you listen, and that curiosity, as you talked about being a cardiologist, and being curious about what unfolds when you do begin to listen. And so we got curious as well as to why has our listening muscle atrophied? And what has happened over time, and why do we want to listen, and what does that unlock when we do? And what we have found as we've been on this journey is one of the things that unlocks as we're in conversation with each other, as we're listening to each other, as we're connecting in with each other, is that we begin to build community. And that community piece is where we also begin to feel safe and belonging. And so when we hear that there's this loneliness epidemic that's happening in our country right now too, we listen and we think, aha, it's another symptom of what's happening when we're not having that community and that belonging piece. In order to have that belonging, we have to nurture it, we have to foster it, we have to understand each other, and we have to understand what we need, and to respect what our different experiences are. And that's one of the reasons why I have loved being a part of this Then and Now series, and also partnering with Vanderbilt and also with the public library, because I'm learning so much about sometimes even communities that I'm a part of, and communities that I share an identity with, I should say, and some of where I don't, but I'm in community with them and I want to be a better community member. So with that, I am really looking forward to learning from you all tonight about what it is like to live with blindness and to be vision impaired, and how I can be a better neighbor as well, and that starts with listening and being in community with you all today. So thank you, I am honored, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks, Samar. Thank you. Important points there. Our program template has not changed, and those that are in the auditorium, you have the program, and we'll follow that, just like we say in church, follow the program. We do have a couple of guests who are, I think, special for this event, who have a connection to our community that has blindness and visual impairment. Our first guest is Peter Chesney of Vanderbilt University. We were connected to Peter by our partner in this program, Simon Tatum, who's with the program. He's a program coordinator for the Vanderbilt Engine for Art, Democracy, and Justice Center. He found Peter, and thank goodness he did, and shared with us. He's a collaborative humanities postdoctoral fellow at Vanderbilt in the departments of art and architecture. He will offer us a 3-minute overview of his work. Some of his work focuses on Morris Frank and the history of the Seeing Eye program and the Seeing Eye dog. This is something I was not familiar with. Peter, please come to the microphone there in front of you, and please share your story.
Thank you. You can hear me? Thank you, Dr. Archibald. And it's really my honor to have been invited to this. And thank you all for being here, by the way. So, what I'm going to be talking about today, coming in from Vanderbilt, is I'm going to be speaking about a person with blindness that my team is, and his life, we're turning it into a short experimental film that rests at the intersection of art, history, and psychology. And about my team and the film. The working title for this project is Dog Power. Our artist who is here is Yael Wisniewski-Levy. I'm the historian. I'm actually technically a sensory historian, Peter Sebastian Chesney, and our psychologist is Professor Dan Levin. So we have support from the Curb Center and the Computer Science Department's Ignite Live, and that said, we're always looking for more support. So there it is. Here's our story. In 1929, Morris Frank incorporated the Seeing Eye, as many of you know, as a nonprofit for the import, breeding, training, and distribution of guide dogs for people with blindness and visual impairments. Frank was born in Nashville. He grew up in the city's Jewish American community, attended Vanderbilt University, and worked as an insurance salesman at the Nashville Trust Building. Blind in both eyes since a boxing mishap as a 16-year-old, Frank first learned about Seeing Eye dogs from Charlie, who operated a news kiosk on Union Street in downtown's financial district. Frank bought a copy of that issue of the Saturday Evening Post and immediately brought it home by streetcar to his father over on Richland. His father gathered the Frank family for an emotional reading later that night. The author of the article was an American expat settled in the Swiss Alps who bred and trained police and war dogs as her hobby. She told the reading public in the United States about what she called Seeing Eye dogs. Frank wanted such a dog for himself, but first he had to send a letter asking the magazine's writer to accept him for training. She agreed as long as he was willing to ship himself by American Express to Europe. Having returned autonomously with the new dog to Nashville, Frank was able to dispense with having to ask relatives to guide him around the city. He never again had to hire a servant to do this kind of work either. Other passengers of the streetcars used to exclaim when they saw the dog Buddy jump up and alert her human companion that they were approaching the stop at West End and Bowling, where he lived. The film about Morris Frank that we are making starts with a question: what is cinema to people with sensory impairments? Since I am half deaf and my collaborator Yael is myopic, we do have some ideas, but we're looking for more. Dog Power will have visuals, but they will not privilege the focused point of view of a standing human. Instead, we use GoPro cameras to shoot from a dog's eye perspective, and we embrace blur. Dog Power will be a film essay with time devoted to the art of image description. When we shoot streetscapes of today's city or objects from the archive, we must tell the audience about them and what they look like. Our aim is to pair showings of Dog Power potentially with 3D printed tactile maps for viewers to hold in their hands. Running fingers over an image from the film, you will be able to feel at least some of what is shown. We are looking for input and feedback, so if anyone here would like a physical version of my remarks, I have 50 copies with my email address and a link to the document. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So not just the Athens of the South or Music City, but the place where we began the Seeing Eye Dog project. Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for sharing that with us. Another new colleague I have just had the opportunity to learn, and I've actually met him through Rebecca Price, our partner at the National Public Library, is Ryan Jolly. And Ryan has this fantastic display set down here on the floor of the auditorium that hopefully you've had a chance to come by and talk with him about it. And if not, please, at the end of the program, please stop by. Ryan is the Tennessee State Park's first ever accessibility coordinator. He is advancing programs that result in access to outdoor experiences for people who have disabilities. And he's doing this as part of a Tennessee State Parks project and program. So thank you, Ryan, for being here. Can you share a few comments about your role in your job and what you're doing?
Yeah, my pleasure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate that. For those who are unable to see me, I'm a middle-aged white male, have a brown beard, brown hair. I'm wearing a gray vest with a Tennessee State Parks logo, and I'm standing in front of a very large Tennessee State Parks banner that has images of several different disability representations, whether it be someone in an altering wheelchair, someone transferring into a kayak on a universally accessible kayak launch, as well as some other images. And on the table to my left are various types of pelts and deer antlers and skulls and things of that sort. So my role in Tennessee State Parks is to make sure that Tennessee is known for being the most accessible state parks network in the entire nation. And that's a lofty goal for us to strive towards, but we've made tremendous progress towards that. We have an entire fleet of all-terrain wheelchairs. We have universally accessible kayak and canoe launches, and we have many things for many people. But for tonight, I want to share just a few of the key projects and initiatives and things that we've been working on that specifically impact the community of people who are blind and low vision. Currently, across our state parks network, we have over a dozen colorblind viewfinders for individuals who experience color blindness to see through those and experience colors in a new way. Right now, we are piloting a project at Paris Landing State Park and Henry Horton State Park where individuals who utilize the IRA service can do so free of charge at those parks. And that's a pilot project for us to test and see how it's working, and then the potential for us to expand that to other state parks as well. And then one specific project is located at Paris Landing State Park, where we have recently opened a tactile trail. And that tactile trail has a cane detectable siding to it. It is a natural surface that is smooth and consistent, yet feels very natural underfoot. It's mulch. It has guide ropes along each side of it. It has tactile interpretive panels, so you can feel what a talon of a red-tailed hawk or feel what the feather of that hawk feels like. Those interpretive panels are also high contrast with larger size font than typical for those of us who are low vision. And so I am low vision. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I lost most of my vision at the age of about 10 years old while I was in public school here in Nashville, and graduated from Antioch High School, go Bears. And I spent much of my youth in the outdoors before losing my vision and after losing my vision. And the access to experiencing the outdoors in all forms through sight, smell, touch, alongside other individuals is very important, and it really impacts and informs the work that I do as an accessibility coordinator for Tennessee State Parks. The key message for everyone to know is that regardless of who you are, you belong in the parks. Parks are a place of belonging for everyone. And so we do many things to make them accessible, but the number one asset that we have within our arsenal of accessibility is our team. And so tonight we have Ranger Jeff with us. He is one of our interpretive rangers. And this team of rangers across the state, the managers of our parks, our hospitality staff, they are the accessibility solution when a solution needs to be nuanced and individualized for you and for me. And so if you find yourself experiencing a barrier at a park, I encourage you to contact the ranger there, explain what your barrier is, and they are trained to serve you in the best way possible. So thank you all for coming and being here tonight and allowing me to share with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan and Peter. Please stand up again. I want to give you guys an applause. Thank you for sharing those really important and unique stories here. Thank you, Ryan, too. Now I'd like to introduce our community leaders who are seated on stage, who will take up the brunt of our program after our community historians have spoken. We have down on the stage Fred Bailey. Fred, you can raise your hand, social activist who will share his great story. Fred has spoken all around this country and in this city for sure about his history, his struggles, his successes, and his building of resilience over his life. We also have Jean Johnson. There you go, Jean. Immediate. Oh, right. Yeah, she's got a fan club here. There we go. Right. Immediate past president of the Tennessee Council of the Blind and first vice president of the Mid-Tennessee Council of the Blind. Lamont Basham was supposed to be here, but she came down with the flu, like everybody else has here in Middle Tennessee. So she's not with us. We wish her good health here. Next, we have James Brown. James, there you go. President, National Federation of the Blind of Tennessee, and many other roles that he could share with us, too. Thank you for coming, James. And last, we have April Meredith. There you go, April. Statewide Information and Referral Coordinator and Associate Program Manager of the Tennessee Disability Pathfinder, and buddy to our buddy, Megan Hart, who was here with us for our first program. Thank you, April, for being here.
Thank you.
We'll now talk a little bit about our community historians, and they'll share some information with us. They represent leaders who have been involved in working with members of the blind and low vision community for years, creating and supporting programs for well over 30-plus years. We actually had Ralph Brewer ready to come here today, but Ralph is unfortunately suffering a medical problem, but he is such a legend and a hero in the blind and the low vision community that we had to go to Ralph to videotape him to be sure we got his words on film, and also for you to hear his ideas, his history, what he's experienced in his life. So we're going to begin we'll begin with a video from Ralph, who is Superintendent Emeritus with the Tennessee School for the Blind. The other thing about Ralph I'd like to mention is that he, along with that, he's won a lot of awards for his work in this field. He's a graduate of the Tennessee School for the Blind and the George Peabody College of Vanderbilt University. And along with working at the Tennessee School for the Blind beginning in 1964, he also became principal of the West Virginia School for the Blind for a number of years, and then he came back to Nashville. But while at the Tennessee School for the Blind as a student, he became a nationally ranked wrestling champion and won the state wrestling championship in 1962. And twice the National Interscholastic League Wrestling Coach of the Year when he coached the team at TSB. And in 2008 was inducted into the National Amateur Wrestling Hall of Fame. So we will now have Ralph's video on the screen now. Thank you.
Blindness is a low incidence, high cost group of children. There's 1 in 3 school-aged population. There's 3 students per 1,000 population blind students. Of course, most of the blind individuals in the United States are made up by adults. There's about 7 or 8 total, blind people in the United States, all including all, that per 1,000. So it's a low incident population, and many times low incident populations get overlooked, and that's one of the challenges that we have to fight every day. Fight meaning educate. Your role as an administrator of a school, for example, a school for the blind, is to continually educate people above you that make the decisions, whether it be the legislature or the commissioner of education or whomever. You've got to continually educate them as to what the blind community and your blind students need to know. If you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be an effective administrator. I enrolled in the Tennessee School for the Blind as a student, as a 5th grader in 1954, September of 1954. And I graduated there in 1962. And I came back to the school after having attended 2 years of college. I went to Auburn University on a on a wrestling scholarship after I graduated. Then my wife and I got married. She was my school sweetheart since the 6th grade. But we were married, and so I tried every way in the world to quit school, but I couldn't find a job, so I decided to go back to school at East Tennessee State College it was then. And after my sophomore year, my second role at the School for the Blind began as the physical education and wrestling coach. And I was working on a teacher's permit. They had such things back in those days. And after 8 years of coaching wrestling, I became what was known as the preschool counselor. I would travel the state of Tennessee, going into the homes of children who were blind, and talking to the parents and laying out the educational possibilities and indeed the educational needs of blind children. And so I did that for 3.5 years, I guess. And so my third role was as the title was the coordinator of the extended day. It's better known as the dean of students nowadays, but I was in charge of the residential program, essentially everything that happened after school. And I was in that role for about 5 years until 1980, when I was accepted a job in West Virginia as the principal of the West Virginia School for the Blind. And so then I came back in September of 1988 for which role are we in? Fourth? So as the fourth role as a superintendent for about 15 years after that. Education for the blind in the whole realm of things is not that old. The reading and writing for blind children and for blind people was not even finalized, you might say, until 1932. And the education for the blind in Tennessee, well, in the United States, only started in 1829 with the Perkins School for the Blind. And then in Tennessee, back in those days, you had to convince people that blind children were educable. You had, a fellow by the name of James Champlin. He was a blind fellow, and he got a group of children together and went to the legislature and convinced the legislature that blind children could read and could learn. And as a result of that, the legislature passed a law to establish the Tennessee School for the Blind.
My goodness.
And that was in 1843, and the school opened in 1844. Technology, I believe, has done more for the education of blind children than any other group of disabilities. It's enabled, the reading, but therein lies one of the challenges that I think we have is to not to forget Braille. And there is a tendency, because we have all these technologies that you can open up an app and it'll read the contents of it or whatever. Because of that, there is a tendency to forget about reading and writing in Braille. Well, if you don't have a method of reading and writing, I was always taught that you were illiterate. So, and there's that tendency, and I'm concerned about that. I think leadership is, you're sort of born with it. You got to have integrity. You got to, let people know that you're an honest broker in the deal. I'm from the country, so I put everything in country terms. The first thing that I would say I learned is that you're not the sharpest knife in the drawer. There's other people on your staff that know much more than you do. So the first thing about leadership that I would say would be to hire people that are smarter than you are. The other thing would be to raise other people's star. Make sure that they get the reinforcement, and the more immediate, the better. And raise their star and let them know that they are a significant part of your force, your team. I like the way Vanderbilt puts their care team, that sort of thing. But to let them know that they are an important cog in the wheel of the operation.
You should know Ralph is actually watching this on the live stream, so everybody's laughing. Thank you, Ralph. Very humble man. What's the shout out over there?
Love you, Ralph.
There you go. That's right, James Brown. When I felt privileged to have the chance to talk with him and to thank the Vanderbilt University Medical Center for taping that, there are a few times in your life when you are with someone that you can feel is really someone who's special, who kind of just emanates greatness, and he's one of those people that I've met in my life. So thank you then. Next we have another great leader, Carol Westlake, Senior Advisor and Founding Executive Director of the Tennessee Disability Coalition, to offer her personal perspectives on the history of services and support for people with blindness and with low vision. Carol, please come up and share your comments. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Ralph. I'm happy to be here, and it's really good to see so many folks I know in the audience. I've been around a long time, so for those of you who don't know me, I am an older white woman with about shoulder length. I like to say blonde, but it's graying hair. Who are we kidding? And I'm wearing navy blue today with a print scarf, and of course have my glasses on so that I can read and see what we're doing. I was really going to take you way back in history today and kind of start talking about the blind and low vision community in Tennessee nearly 100 years ago, and Peter stole my thunder. I was going to talk about Frank Morris. So I will a little bit anyway. I know that a lot of you in this audience may have a sense of that, but for those of you who don't know, the next time you're downtown, look for the Hotel Indigo on Union Street, and there is an historic marker there. And that historic marker marks the spot where in the same building on that same street, the Seeing Eye organization, the nonprofit organization, was founded, which is pretty astonishing and pretty exciting. And of course, it's always fun to see the marker when I'm downtown and kind of look at that. And as Peter told you, Frank was a Nashville native. He actually lost his first eyesight in his right eye at age 6. when he was riding a horse and hit a branch, and it took out his eye. He lost his left eye at Montgomery Bell Academy, for those of you who are Nashvillians, in a boxing match. The other interesting, I'm glad to tell you the fun facts because Peter told you the seeing eye story. Which, Frank's mother was also totally blind from an accident, interestingly enough. So they were kind of prominent Nashvillians, but leaders in the blind and low vision community during those days. And as Peter told you, Frank had to go to Europe to meet Dorothy Eustace to try this new idea, which was about training sighted eye dogs for people who are blind. It was not something she had done either. And because he was blind, the only way to get across Europe on a ship was to be sent as a parcel. Yeah, so interestingly enough. We've come a long way, which is a really, really good thing. I think that some of the most important things, clearly starting the Seeing Eye organization and being the first in this country to introduce guide dogs, Seeing Eye dogs to the community, to the country, frankly, was really, really important. But Frank had a couple of interesting things that really drove him. When he was a student at Vanderbilt, he, by his own admission, was unhappy and kind of bitter because he had to have help everywhere, right? That was really part of this impetus about finding other ways. He said that the worst part was going on dates. He always had to find a double date for someone, right? So that his helper would have somebody and wouldn't just be a third wheel. You can imagine that would not be very pleasant, right? And a lot of incentive to figure out other solutions, which is exactly what he did. I think the other really interesting thing that he and his dog Buddy cut quite the figure downtown. As Peter told you, he was a salesman for insurance company, for the National Life and Accident Insurance Company, speaking of the L&C Tower, right? There's a long history in Nashville about this. The thing that I, as a disability advocate, find the most interesting is that he and his family talked a lot about how he was successful in challenging the no dogs allowed policies, right? That anybody still have a problem with that occasionally? I would say that we do. So streetcars, elevators, restaurants, right? All had no dogs allowed. And so really, this concept of service dogs sharing space in public places also really started here in Nashville, which I think is just really, really important. If we move interestingly enough, at the same time that Frank was really pioneering Seeing Eye dogs and sort of changing Nashville's perception of what it meant to be blind, there were a lot of pretty interesting things going on at George Peabody College at the same time. I happen to be a Peabody alum. Now, Peabody is now a part of Vanderbilt. I actually have a Peabody degree. I also have a Vanderbilt degree. You keep, during that period of time. And I think that the work that Peabody has done, and as Ralph kind of talked about, some of the important things about educating and training folks who have blindness or low vision, and that we didn't used to think that was important, right? Well, in 1921, Peabody introduced a summer program that included for courses for teachers who were working in schools for the blind at the time. Ralph talked about how those really started in the late 1800s, but there were not necessarily teachers who had specific training and knew how to work with folks who were blind or had low vision. The Peabody Reflector in 1921 reported that this was the first time that any institution in America has offered these special courses and the opportunity for teachers in schools for the blind to take definite and systemic work in education and methods courses. So another sort of Nashville and Tennessee first in addressing the needs of folks with blindness and low vision. If you fast forward to 1957, still at Peabody, the Southern Regional Education Board and the American Foundation for the Blind selected Peabody to house one of 4 regional training centers for teacher prep. And Peabody formalized a visual disabilities program at that time and made it year-round, which was a brand-new thing. And so Peabody and Nashville served as a hub for 16 southern states in terms of training and supporting teachers and teacher preparation for blindness and low vision. Some of you in the audience who have been around as long as I do might remember the names of Sam Ashcroft or Randall Harley or Butch Hill or more recently Ann Korn, all of whom were researchers, academics, teachers, I would say activists and innovators who really changed the field of blind education for everybody in the nation. And I think that Nashville can be really proud of that role that this community has played and that our residents have played in advancing independence and inclusion for the blind and low vision community, as well as the broader disability community at large. I talked to a couple of friends during the reception today about the fact that it's sometimes hard just to talk about blindness and low vision because we all are part of a broader community of disability, and that very frequently people have more than one disability that they have to face, and we're all sort of in this together, right? I'd like to take my time to talk to you about one more person in more recent history who's not here tonight, but who's somebody who many of you may remember, and that is John Harris. And John was a TSB graduate. He is somebody who in the late 80s and through the 90s and the early 2000s was a big partner with the Disability Coalition that I work for, and with vocational rehabilitation and at MTSU, in really making a difference for disabled students and for those people with blindness and low vision. Alex Hubbard, who is another blind Nashvilleian who's had an impact on our city and used to write for the Tennessean, once wrote of John Harris was in for a surprise when he reported to the Tennessee School for the Blind. From rural Tennessee and already in his high school years, Harris's education had long been neglected. But when he arrived at the Donaldson campus of TSB in March of 1965, he found out he still didn't belong. Harris was blind, had been blind from birth, but he was also black. And while segregation was breathing its last breath, the Donaldson campus was, for a few more months, the white students only. Harris belonged at Hermitage Avenue. And for those of you who may or may not know, 88 Hermitage Avenue once served for nearly a century as the School for the Blind, for children black and white, but for 13 years, between 1952 and 1965, it served as the TSB's colored department. Later, it was the Regional Office for Vocational Rehabilitation, and many of you may remember it from those days. It is now empty and is listed as one of Nashville's endangered historic buildings. There are those in this community that would like to see that building preserved and used to honor the blind community, the black community, and the disabled community. So John once said, "I went to the Donaldson School because my social services caseworker was from Chicago, and she didn't know that schools for the blind weren't integrated." Harris went on to say, the principal, the superintendent, which may well have been Ralph Brewer, by the way, and I guess it was, drove me back to the Hermitage Avenue School, but told my parents and me that we'd be going back to the Donaldson School in the fall. Interesting history. John had a good career at TSB in high school. By the way, he was a champion wrestler, probably trained by Ralph Brewer, right? You know, it was a very small community when it comes right down to it. He was originally from Munford, Tennessee, but he made Middle Tennessee his home. And for 27 years, he worked at Middle Tennessee State University, at the school where he also graduated, in the Disabled Student Services Office. And he made a huge difference and impact on MTSU and accessibility there, and making sure that the students and faculty were aware of a whole range of accessibility issues. After his retirement, MTSU named a scholarship in his honor. But beyond MTSU, John was a mover and a shaker in the disability community as well. He was active in many aspects of vocational rehabilitation. Like some people in the audience, he has served on a variety of boards and committees, making a really big difference. And I think that we need to give a shout out to everyone in this community who really gives of themselves to make this entire community a better place. And John was one of those people. You know, he served on the Vocational Rehabilitation Council. He served on the Statewide Independent Living Council. He served on the board for the Tennessee Disability Coalition. And he partnered with a lot of organizations to really work hard to implement, well, to get past and to implement the Americans with Disabilities Act, which benefits absolutely all of us. So he had a really big impact. Those of you who knew John or know John know that he never met a stranger, and he had a tremendous impact on the General Assembly as well. Ralph talked about the importance of making sure that policymakers understand what's needed and what they can do to help make our communities more inclusive and more acceptable. When John retired, I kind of lost touch with him a little bit. I would love to be able to get back in touch with him, but he was such a central figure for about 30 years in this state in terms of promoting those issues around blindness and low vision that I really wanted to share that with you today. I'm going to end my history lesson there. But what I hope you take away from Frank Morris, from Peabody Scholars, from John Harris, is that Nashville has an amazing and rich history, made richer by the contributions of people that are blind and have low vision, and that they are an important part of the tapestry of Nashville, and that we're all better for it. Thank you.
Need to say wow into the microphone. That was spectacular. I want to thank Carol, Ralph, I want to thank Peter and Ryan. As a cardiologist and an educator at Vanderbilt, one of the things when you're a doc and you're training other young doctors is when you learn something and you're educated on something on the fly, you immediately apply it. And so to make up for my own deficit, I'd like to tell the audience that I'm about 6'3" tall, African American, wearing a beautiful, I think, gray chalk stripe peak lapel suit, stole off Cary Grant, and wearing tortoiseshell eyeglasses. So if that doesn't give you something to think about, there you go. And my buddy Ralph, he would probably want me to tell you, and I'm sure he's at home blushing and laughing right now, he knows what I'm going to say. For his interview, he's wearing my black Chesterfield Brooks Brothers overcoat that's about 30 years old, and a beautiful Paul Stewart purple floral scarf. So think about that as he's knocking us out with his comments there. There you go. So we'll move on now to our closing part of our program, and that is to hear from our community leaders who will offer their own bio sketches and touch on their own unique journeys that have included, as I mentioned before, successes, failures, family support, and stories of resilience. So let's begin with Fred Bailey, social activist and buddy of Ralph Brewer. Fred, you have the podium with you have the stage with your mic.
Thank you, Dr.
He's
Church.
fine, Carol.
Come up to the mic.
Oh, gotta come up. Yeah, we're gonna,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
You said podium, and I thought,
Well, that's what I thought. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you this evening. When I'm talking about my beginnings, you would think I'm not supposed to be sitting here tonight talking to you. I'm the 10th of 15 children born to a sharecropping family. Sharecropping being a misnomer because whatever part of the crops that we were supposed to share, my father fed his disease with that. He was an alcoholic. We were extremely afraid of him. He was volatile. We just stayed away from him. We were so afraid of him. We lived about, I would say, a good 1.5 miles, 2 miles from where we had to go to catch the bus to get to school. So it's safe to say we didn't go to school very much. When we did go, we got picked on so severely and made fun of because we never had good clothes, we never had lunch money, even some of the teachers picked on us. I didn't know anything about blindness. My father nor my mother ever said anything about it. I knew something was wrong because all of my other brothers and sisters, we had about maybe 2 steps to go down off our porch. My other brothers and sisters, they just ran down it, but I had to kind of feel around for them with my foot. And then I caught up with them because I was trailing voices. and I've been adapting and adjusting all of my life. So on one of those auspicious times that we got into school, I was coming down the hall and ran smack into one of my teachers. I didn't see her as she was coming out of her door. Now, you got to understand the time. This is like 1962, 63. I don't know about what school you all went to, but the teachers where I went would literally beat you to death. This woman had me in the collar. I'm only like 9 at the time, 9 or 10. This woman had me in the collar, and she was marching me to the office, and she said, boy, you better either be blind or else. Well, I knew what the else meant, but I didn't know what the blindness meant because we never talked about it. When the teachers, I'll be sitting in the desk and the teachers say, spell this, Bailey, they'll write something on the board. I didn't know what to say, I couldn't see it. But this teacher took me down to Professor Hall. His name was, he was the principal, B.J. Hall. I'm saying professor now because I'm sophisticated. He was Fessor Hall then. Okay. And we were scared of him. You could hear him beating people when you're going down the hall. What's wrong with you, boy? That's what he said. Man, I'm not saying a thing. I'm just sitting there. His wife was kind of like the guidance counselor. I remember them taking me to Nashville to a doctor. I even remember his name, Dr. Forrester. And I remember, you know, going to Nashville. We're on a farm. I mean, so deep in the woods, nobody knew we were back in there. And that was the first time I had been to Nashville off that farm. And you might as well drop me off in the middle of Egypt. It's how weird it was. And I remember Dr. Forrester shuffling his papers and grunting to himself. He finally put them down. He said, son, you got a problem that we're just now learning about. You got retinitis pigmentosa. And he paused, and I'm listening. I'm thinking about what Miss Hayes said, that was the teacher. I'm thinking about what she said, boy, you either about to be blind or else. And I don't hear anything about being blind in retinitis pigmentosa. And in my time, we did not question adults. What adults told you was law. But now I'm scared. So I finally got the nerve. I said, well, sir, does that mean that I'm blind? And it's almost like he was hesitating to say, yes, sir, you are. He kind of waited. He said, son, you're blind for all practical purposes, and you will be blind for the rest of your life because there's no cure for this. I said, thank God. Now, I know he said, well, not only is he blind, he's crazy. But I had been blind for like 9 or 10 years, and it didn't hurt. Well, I knew if I'd have gone back and told Miss Hayes I wasn't blind, that woman was going to beat me to death. When I got there, she was waiting on me. What's wrong with you, boy? I said, they told me I was blind. She spun on her heels and went back to her class. But I tell you that because my life took off when I went home and told my daddy, because you got to understand him. We never engaged him. We were just afraid of him. But I just learned something new and forgot and let my guard down. I went home. I said, hey, Daddy, they told me I was blind today. And when I saw him getting up off the couch, or heard him getting off the couch, I realized I'd made a mistake. His patented phrase was, let's get a good understanding so it won't be any mistakes. That usually means you're going to be getting up off the floor in the next few minutes. But he kind of pushed me against the wall. He said, okay, so you're black, you're blind, and you're poor. You only got 2 ways out of your predicament. Not 3 ways, not 4, just 2. Think a lot of yourself first and work like hell. He said, now, just practicing those 2 things, I can guarantee you food in your stomach and a roof over your head for the rest of your life. Just practicing those 2 things, whether you ever learn how to write your name or not. He said, now, if you're able to get an education along with that, you will know how to handle the blackness and the blindness. And I didn't, since he didn't hit me or anything, I flew out the front door and was glad, kind of relieved that he didn't hurt me. Somehow, Dr. Forrester must have turned my name in to somewhere because somebody found us back up in those woods, and they said, we got a school for people like you. And it was the Tennessee School for the Blind. I went there in 1965 when they integrated. I was academically way behind, but I came in contact with some people named Brewers, Ewings, Crockett's, Hastings, Wallace, a bunch of teachers. They were teachers. They whipped me into academic shape fairly quickly. And I think I was about a sophomore there before I realized what my father had done without even realizing what he was doing. I don't think he realized what he was doing. But he stripped me of the notion of ever going through this life as a blind black man. He made me go through this life as Fred Bailey. So I got my education at the School for the Blind. It was a great education. I entered the Tennessee School for the Blind as a poor, unassured, no confidence black boy. I left TSB as Fred Bailey. Went on to Tennessee State University, got a degree in political science pre-law while working for General Electric, the Commercial and Industrial Motor Division. I was going to go on to law school, but I found out I think everybody's guilty. Okay? Okay? Then I thought I would get into politics, but I found out I couldn't grin and lie at the same time. So I started. I became a wrestling coach and got into real estate. That's how I make my living. And by the time I got out of Tennessee State and got into life itself, I found out. I thought my daddy and my mother was my boss, and they were. I thought my teachers were my boss, and they were. But my real boss was life. And what I found out about life, that it could care less about my blackness or my blindness. It told me to adapt and adjust. And that's what I've done. So by the time I've gotten through the School for the Blind, through Tennessee State, my blackness and my blindness were made null and void. Fred Bailey could not be those things because he didn't have the luxury to be those. He had to adapt and adjust. And I've also found, in order for you to forget your blackness, your blindness, your whatever, service to others is the key. So I started several nonprofits. One in Gallatin, Tennessee, where I'm from. I got tired of watching the kids there fall through the cracks, making D's and F's and all of that kind of stuff. The courts, the churches, the mental health centers said, Mr. Bailey, can you help these kids? I don't know. Send them to me. Let me see what we got. And I got these kids in, and I found out, because the first thing I wanted to see was your most recent report card. It told me a lot. When they knew that Mr. Bailey did not care about your circumstances, I've got to get you ready for life. When get up close and personal with you, next thing I know, we start seeing A.B. honor roll kids. We graduated 100% out of that school up there. And a whole lot of those kids are medical doctors now. I have spent the rest of my life as service to others. And let me tell you, I'm skipping a lot of stuff because I'm not good at 5-minute stuff. But I spend my life now, and I will spend what life I have left repaying the debt to the John Browns, the Medgar Evers, the Z. Alexander Lubies, the Little Rock Nine, Shrina Goodman Cheney, the 4 little girls in the 16th Avenue bombing. I owe them a debt. And in the way I dress, in my respect, in my work ethic, in my giving back, I always ask myself, these people laid it on the line for me. There's no greater honor than someone giving their life for you. Can these people continue to live through me? If I can't answer in the affirmative, I need to check myself. That's what Fred Bailey is about now. Being blind means nothing to me. I'm not, and you will never hear me refer to myself as an African American. You will hear me always refer to myself as Fred Bailey. That's who you have to deal with me as. You cannot deal with me from a blind perspective or an ethnicity perspective. You have to deal with me with Fred Bailey, because what I found out, there's all kind of statistics on being black. There's all kind of statistics on being blind, but you would not find a statistics on Fred Bailey. And when you make people deal with you by your name and not your conditions, they get a newfound respect for you because you don't let them go where they shouldn't be. So I want to tell you that blind people has contributed a lot. The lady was just talking about John Harris. I was on the team with John in wrestling. John beginnings is similar to mine, but almost, man, if people just knew his story, those of you that can see, don't whine to me. Because you truly do not know what a hardship is. You truly don't. And most of us up here know what that is. But I never, ever had a problem with discrimination or anything like that. Because if you don't like Fred Bailey, I guarantee you it's not because he's blind. It's not because he's black. It's just that you haven't been diagnosed yet. Yeah. And I guarantee you, if you can get your doctor to prescribe you some Clozaril, Haldol, lithium, I guarantee you feel so much better about yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop there because if I go any more, I know I'll go over 5 minutes, and I'm not used to this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Next, we have Gene Johnson, immediate past president of the Tennessee Council of the Blind and first vice president of the Middle Tennessee Council of the Blind. Gene.
Hello. I'm very honored. I wanted to make sure you could hear me. I'm very honored to be here tonight, and I really appreciate being asked to be on this special event. I think it's very important. My story is a little different, and let me say I love Fred Bailey. We went to school together, and I love Ralph, and we're going to get to that a little bit later because he's in my story. My birth was interesting. I was born many, many years ago, two months premature. I was supposed to be born on George Washington's birthday. A little history for those of you who are younger. We didn't have President's Day. We had Abraham Lincoln's birthday, which was February 12th, and we had George Washington's birthday, which was February 22nd. And that's when I was supposed to be born. But surprise, Santa Claus is coming to town. I was born on Christmas Eve, 2 months early, weighing 2.5 pounds. I spent, well, that's nothing now. But anyway, another part of history. Anyway, I spent 6 weeks in an incubator, and the oxygen that kept me alive did damage my eyes, causing me to be totally blind. And I'm sure that this was really upsetting to my parents, who had already lost one child to prematurity, and then they had a miscarriage, and then I came along. But for me, it was great because I lived. Not only that, for me, growing up blind was as normal as seeing is for you. I didn't know I was any different from my playmates. I just could roll down the hills with the best of them and swing and slide and all that stuff. When I was 3 years old, my parents divorced, and for the most part, after that, I lived with my maternal grandparents. We moved around a lot, and somewhere along the way, unfortunately, without going through all the details for you, my father was not aware of exactly where I was located, so he didn't have any contact with me. You heard Perkins School for the Blind mentioned earlier. That's where I went to school for first, second, and third grade, and they knew that it was really important for little children who were blind to develop good fine motor skills. So we had this class that was really fun. They called it arts and crafts. And what we didn't know is we were learning life skills. They taught us to tie our shoes, and then they gave us these big, long, wooden things and some thick cord, cotton cord, and taught us how to knit. So anyway, then we were making little hot plates, or the things that you set hot pots on when you take them out of the oven. That was back in the old days, and when you had to worry about that. We also learned Braille, and because Braille has lots of shortcuts, when you're in first grade, you don't learn it all at once, because you don't know words in first grade that have letter combinations like T-I-O-N and M-E-N-T and L-E-S-S. Those are bigger words. But we learned how to read Braille, how to write Braille with the Perkins Brailler, and to write Braille with something called a slate and stylus, and I think some of you saw that earlier tonight during the reception. And we also learned how to read Braille music, although at the time I didn't know what I was going to do with Braille music. I loved music. I loved to sing. And then after third grade, my grandfather retired from the Navy, and he, my grandmother, and two of my sisters and I moved to Middle Tennessee because this is where his family lived. We only lived 2 miles from the Tennessee School for the Blind, and they enrolled me at the Tennessee School for the Blind, but instead of enrolling me under my legal name, they enrolled me under their last name because they wanted everyone to think that instead of being my grandparents, they were my mother and father. I knew better because I had memory of my mother and saw her sometimes, but they were telling my younger sisters that she was their older sister. So that was a little strange, but I wasn't supposed to tell anybody. Because I had lived in the dorm at Perkins, I wanted to live in the dorm here, even though we were only 2 miles from the school. And they let me do that. They didn't have a problem with that. And one of my fourth grade roommates became my best friend, and she is still my friend today. We'd go down to the playroom at the dorm, and we'd play music. We both played the piano, and we'd sing, and we'd even write songs. We didn't have any Nashville hits, but what can I say? So we would also get together and tell each other those secrets that nobody else was supposed to know. Because like me, she had a family that had what some would call dirty laundry. I also received orientation and mobility training while I was at the School for the Blind, but it wasn't like it is now. I was 15 years old before I ever had a white cane in my hand. Before that, if we wanted to walk with somebody, we didn't know anything about, quote, sighted guide techniques, unquote. We just said, hey, I want to walk with you. Let me grab a wing. And we'd grab their arm. Then, when I had orientation and mobility, I was a little resistant because I said, I'd rather use a dog. It's not normal to walk down a sidewalk wagging a stick in front of you. It's more normal to walk with a dog. And I love dogs, love animals. But eventually, one day when I crossed a street with the cane and made it safely across, it's like, I might need to rethink this. My mother and father, of course, my mother was in California, and I had some contact with her. My father hadn't seen me for 15 years, but finally he found out where I was. And the neat thing about living in the dorm is when I was in the dorm during the week, they could call me and talk to me. And I really did want to have a better relationship and a parent-daughter relationship with my mother and father. That didn't mean that I didn't love my grandparents, because I did. My grandfather is the most wonderful man I've ever known. But this was a way to connect with them, and I really appreciated that. Like Fred said, I too got a great education, received a great education at TSB. When we graduated from high school, that year they had a college prep program, and you'll find I've had lots of connection to Peabody and/or Vanderbilt. So we had a college prep program through Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and because of the good education I had, I didn't really find it that hard to adapt to college. We all took one class that would then transfer to the college of our choice. Some of us were on the Peabody campus, and some of the others were on the Vanderbilt campus. And back then, we didn't have student disability services like John Harris did when he was at MTSU. We just kind of were on our own. We were told that we needed to advocate for ourselves, talk to the professors about how we were going to take tests and such. And sometimes we'd have to carry a portable typewriter, for those of you who know what a typewriter is. I'm probably the oldest one on the stage, by the way.
Thank God for technology.
Yeah, way before technology, yeah. And so, you know, we had to carry a portable typewriter to class if we were going to have an essay test, but that was no big deal, because years before I had carried a Perkins Brailler and great big Braille books back and forth between the dorm and the school building. Then, when I was ready for college, I moved to Idaho to live with my dad and stepmom. And there were a few things my dad never understood, and I never quite had the ability to articulate to him what I was talking about. Like, he insisted that I could see dark. And I'm going, no, I see nothing. And he said, well, you don't see light, do you? And I said, no. Well, then you see dark. No, I don't see anything. There's no message going from my optic nerve to my brain. But he never got it. So years later, I'm talking to an elementary classroom, 5th and 6th graders probably, and this little boy said, oh, I get it. My elbow sees nothing, and your eyes see nothing. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Because of the great orientation and mobility training that I had had at the School for the Blind, I was able to tell my stepmom what information I needed, and being a very creative person, she actually taught me the streets of downtown Spokane near where I'd be going to college, and we went out to college, and she was able to teach me how to get from one building to another on the college campus. So that was really awesome. And when I went to live with them, my dad hadn't seen me for 15 years, so it was an incredible experience. I was always afraid that I wouldn't be able to cook. My grandmother, although she was very hard to live with, was a wonderful cook, and I aspired to cook like her. But I was afraid of the stove. And when I opened the oven and the heat rolled out, I'm backing up as fast as I could because I was scared of it. And that was one thing, unfortunately, at the time that they weren't able to teach me at the School for the Blind. The home economics teacher said, well, we don't have time to wait for you to put the biscuits in the oven today. It's getting cold. We'll let one of the girls with some vision do it. And that was for my senior dinner, so I was not happy. But I needed to learn how to cook because now I was going to do student teaching. So I had a girlfriend, and she was a helper type. She had been a candy striper, as they called them then, at hospitals during the summer. And she said, well, let's get an apartment together this summer since you're going to be teaching in the fall, and I'll teach you how to cook. And I'm thinking, no way. No. But she fooled me. She had her own ways of teaching me about the stove and the oven, and she did teach me to cook that summer, and then I did my student teaching that fall. Another obstacle that I had to overcome before doing the student teaching, I was going to be in a 5th and 6th grade combination class where all the students except for one or two, were able to see and look at the blackboard. How was I going to teach them math problems? Well, my professors helped. We got a big metal board and then cut out numbers out of poster board or some sort of thick paper and put magnets on the back. And so I was able to take the numbers and the operation signs and put them on that magnetic board and then set up the problems for my students to see. Thank goodness it was just 5th and 6th grade and not algebra. My first real job was in Marshall, Missouri. Did I mention I moved around a lot? Anyway, in Marshall, Missouri, working with people who, of all ages, who were developmentally disabled. And a lot of us were from other towns and just went there for jobs, and we became pretty close. And so one night we all decided to go to a Royals baseball game. And truth be known, I'm not a big baseball fan, but it was something to do with my boyfriend and the other people that were friends of mine. So we went to the game, and we thought everything was going to be fine. Well, in the 5th inning, the rains came down and the floods went up, and the next thing we knew, we were trudging through the parking lot with water almost up to our knees to get to the car. Yeah, oh, well, just wait. So we get in the car. The person who was driving made a wrong turn at Raytown. That's one of the kind of suburbs of Kansas City. We went into some water that was over the road. It pulled us into a culvert. I'm feeling water on my feet, water up to my shins, and it keeps coming. And basically, we had to swim out of the car and swim to shore. We did that. And some emergency vehicles came by, and they were concerned that, you know, if someone was in the car. But fortunately, we all got out, spent the night at a hotel that didn't have any power because of the storm, and were able to get back to Marshall from Kansas City the next day. I moved back to Nashville in '79 and decided to go for my master's degree. Guess where I went to school? Peabody, yeah, there you go. And I knew Dr. Harley well. He was one of my professors, and I loved him. So I got my master's degree, and then after I got it, where I worked in Missouri, they were even more eager to hire me back. I guess I'd done a decent job when I was there before. So they hired me back, and I went back, married someone that I had known from when I lived there before. And I really hoped to have children and wanted to be a mama, but it just wasn't happening. Well, we happened to move here in 1985 and started going to the infertility clinic at, guess where? Vanderbilt. And one day, my husband was going to go to our appointment after his job, and I was going to leave our house in Madison and ride the bus. I rode the bus everywhere then, had no qualms about it, you know. And when I was at 3rd and Old Hickory Boulevard in Madison, I started across, and I was hit by a car. Yeah. Turned my life upside down temporarily, of course. I'm fortunate that I didn't have a head injury or a spinal cord injury. It just broke my left leg in 3 places and bruised my hip. So there was a recovery from that. I did some substitute teaching at the School for the Blind, which is also where I did my student teaching for my master's degree. And then eventually I did get a job at Tennessee Rehabilitation Center. But I didn't get it the first time that I applied because they were able to hire 2 people. She was a rehabilitation teacher and he was an O&M instructor. And then they left about 4 months later to go back to Illinois. And I had a little glee in my heart, and they did hire me then. I loved my job at TRC. It's not now like it was then. It was wonderful. We covered all areas that people who were blind needed. And I was very fortunate to get the job because oftentimes it's hard for people who are blind to get jobs, even if they're qualified. And in spite of, you know, the laws that say that, you know, they can't discriminate against us, they can find ways if they really want to. So I was glad to have the job, but then rides were also a challenge because We didn't have Lyft and Uber and, these different ride-share programs. And even if there was any paratransit, which there was very little, if any, it didn't cross county lines. But I did manage to find rides, and I managed to keep my job there. And I taught kitchen skills, so now I was teaching students to do what I was so afraid to do, and I used some of the methods that my friend had used when she helped me to get over my fears. I also taught Braille. I wasn't happy with the curricula that I found in the Braille classroom, so I created my own Braille curriculum. And fortunately, it worked. People were successful learning Braille, and I'm happy to say that some of my students that I taught Braille to are right here in the room with me. Woohoo! My husband of that time and I did split up, but then years later, I remarried, and my current husband is here, Carrie. And what's interesting is Carrie's father was the night watchman, Oscar Johnson, when I went to school there. Little did I know that many, many years later, I would be marrying the night watchman's son. I know, isn't that sweet? Romantic. Yes. I do love to sing, and for a while I was in a community choir here in town called Nashville in Harmony. Its members are made up of LGBTQ people and their allies, and I heard April say, yay, she's been to our concerts before. I'm no longer in the choir, but they were really accommodating. They made sure that I got the music so someone could read me the words, and they sent me the notes to my parts. So it was a lot of fun, and I met lots of wonderful people. Back close to the time when I thought I might want to retire, I had had this bump on the right side of my head for years and didn't really think too much of it, except that if it's anything bad, I don't want to know, I know that's not good logic, but that's the way it was. So one day I showed my niece, and my hairdresser had said, oh, it's probably just a sebaceous cyst. And she said, Aunt Jeannie, that is not a sebaceous cyst. You need to get that checked out. Well, when somebody talks to you that way, you do what they say, right? My husband would say it's like using my teacher voice. But anyway, so I got it checked out, and sure enough, I have what's called a meningioma. For those who don't know, that's a tumor that is usually benign, grows on the dura or the covering of the brain. And since it had started getting bigger, it was suggested that I get it removed. Where I had the biopsy, which was another hospital, they recommended a doctor, a neurosurgeon. But I had a friend who'd had a tumor when he was younger that left him visually impaired. But I said, who did you go to at Vanderbilt? And he said, well, he's no longer there, but you need to go to, can I mention doctors' names? Well, I haven't said it yet. Okay, all right. So anyway, he said, you need to find out about Dr. Reed Thompson. And I said, okay. And so I'm one that likes to do a little research on the computer. And so I looked up Dr. Reed Thompson, and I looked up the other doctor that I was going to see. And Dr. Reed Thompson had a TED Talk on YouTube. I love YouTube, by the way. Had a TED Talk, and so I looked that up, and I listened to him. It was only a 16-minute thing. I think it's called Open the Windows of Your Mind. But I listened to him, and when I heard him talk and how much he loved the brain and how fascinating the brain was, I thought, wow, he is as passionate about the brain as I am about Braille and literacy. And it turned out I made an appointment with him, and I happened to see him a few days before I saw the other doctor who'd been recommended. He took 45 minutes to answer my questions that he anticipated I'd have, asked me if I had any more, put his hands on either side of my hand and just held my hand there and said, they're very steady, and we don't rush brain surgery. Well, I went to the other doctor a few days later. He came running down the hall, ran into the room. Hello, I'm Dr. So-and-so. We can probably do your surgery in about 2 or 2.5 hours. I'll see you for your surgery. And ran out of the room. Well, There was no question about which doctor I was going to use. And Dr. Thompson told me that I might have a little disability, temporary. And sure enough, a few days later, well, first, let me tell you, he did the surgery on Thursday morning and sent me home Saturday afternoon. And I cooked dinner that Sunday afternoon. But that, a few days later, the fingers of my left hand were a little numb. And here I am trying to read Braille. I couldn't tell the dots. Now, I knew from teaching Braille for over 20 years already that I had students that said, well, I can't tell what those dots are. And I realized they weren't lying or anything, but in my mind I'd think, how can they not know how can they not feel those dots? But then I got my answer because I couldn't either. So I was very happy to get that behind me, and I did retire right around that time, and that way I didn't have to worry about using lots of sick time, right? I also found out about a Facebook group called East Nashville Fiber Friends, and I got some knitting needles and some yarn, and I went to one of their get-togethers, and I've been knitting ever since. I hadn't done knitting since I'd gotten out of college, so that was something fun that I could do in my retirement. I have worked for a couple of rescue groups in town, fostering dogs and helping the dogs find their forever homes. I volunteered at a food bank for a little while, and in between answering the phone, I was able to knit hats and pass those on to the food bank. And then at the end of 23, I promise I'm almost done, guys. At the end of 23, I started having what I just called discomfort kind of up in my neck area, and I told my doctor, and he said, it's not your chest. And I said, no, it's my neck area. And he said, well, we need to do some tests. And they did some tests, and finally they said, well, we think you need to go to the heart cath lab. And I thought, wow, that's weird. But anyway, so I went to the heart cath lab, not thinking too much of it, although I'd had a stress test, and I think it was that one that revealed that at some point, unbeknownst to me, I'd had a heart attack. You've heard about women who have the silent heart attacks. Well, there you go. So they took me in. I had a wonderful cardiologist, again from Vanderbilt, Dr. Bagay, love him very much. And I was awake for the heart cath. You're, I think, generally awake, and I was awake. And he said, well, I'm going to go talk to your husband. He said, you have a couple of blockages, and I'm hoping we can avoid open heart surgery and just stent them, but I need to go see what your husband says. Because, of course, I had a little anesthesia, and so I couldn't make a decision, right? I absolutely could have, but anyway, so he went and talked to my husband and came back. Good job, Carrie. He made the right decision. He said, well, yeah, if you can stent them, do it. So they stented one that day, which happened to be Groundhog Day. And then they stented the other one 2 weeks later. So I'm puzzled. I talked to him later, and I said, okay, I've never had high cholesterol. How is it that I had a blockage? And he said, well, it's your family history. What I had learned later, I mean, not now, but what I had learned after I got married was a few months after I got married, my father had to have open heart surgery, had to have bypass surgery. And then later on down the line, my brother had to have bypass surgery. And even though I've never had high cholesterol, Dr. Bagay said, it's your family history. And so now I'm going to be on a statin for the rest of my life. Woohoo! Anyway, but it's not bad. I just take a pill every morning. So I'm so grateful to the people that taught me at TSB, all the skills that I got, Peabody College, Vanderbilt, where I got my master's, the doctors who, as far as I'm concerned, saved my life more than one time. When I found out I had to have brain surgery, before I talked to my doctor, I thought I was going to die in the operating room. I mean, brain surgeries, really? So anyway, but as I always tell people, when you have a disability, whatever it is, yes, you're still Fred Bailey or Gene Johnson or James Brown or whoever you are, but you're also, as a person with a disability, or not even, educating the people around you. You never know what you might say or what you might do that is going to have a profound effect on somebody else, or how much it will help or change them. So just remember that, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jean. We'll move to James Brown, President of the National Federation of the Blind of Tennessee. James?
So I was told I have 5 minutes.
Yeah, forget that.
I'm going to try to stick pretty close to it. I did prepare for it somewhere around that neighborhood. But just for fun's sake, if some of you kind of giggled when you heard my name, I did name my eldest son Chris, which means that God does have a sense of humor for sure. Really, you can describe my childhood in 2 words. A half-blind kid who had a lot of fun, but also in a lot of dangerous areas. If you go to my neighborhood in Antioch, Tennessee, walk to the end of Forges Drive, take a dirt path for about 40 feet, walk up on this big, huge rock, and you look down, and there's a 900-foot drop. For those of you who don't know, that's about as tall as the Batman building downtown. So that is Vulcan Rock Quarry, place where I grew up. If you look out over that rock quarry, you'll see a crusher tower, which us kids climbed up to very frequently to the top. Also had a nice little swimming hole. We had what looked like a set of sand dunes, but it was made out of some sort of stone we would drive our 3-wheelers on. And we would ride horses around the edge of the rock quarry. Those were the 80s. Those were the good old days. That kind of stuff doesn't happen very much anymore. But I very quickly found out, growing up as a teenager who was legally blind, that people had some negative connotations about blindness. And those negative connotations a lot of times look like this. Oh, James, I'm so sorry that you're legally blind. That's one of the worst things that could ever happen to a person. I feel so bad for you. Other people, I can remember several times where they say, oh, I think I might commit suicide if something like that happened to me. And so I got these societal cues very early on that blindness was something bad, that blindness was something to be feared, that blindness was even something to be ashamed of. And I went through my adolescence this way, and I really did what they call in the African American community as passing. So if you know about that particular situation where an African American might try to be more white so they can mitigate racism, that's kind of what I went through. So I try to pass as a sighted person. And I can remember my first day at MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, where I did meet John Harris. I decided that particular day that I was going to be blind. I decided I was going to take a white cane to campus and use it. I decided that I wasn't going to look like a drunk guy fraternity guy who started drinking too early in the morning. And once I made the decision to be blind, to be who I really was, and not try to pass as something that I wasn't, it really set me free. I was able to use non-visual techniques. I was able to use a cane. Guess what? I could go out at night because I had a cane that would protect me from falling, protect me from running into things, protect me from the idea of people thinking that I was foolish and not just had a disability. And so I went on and I went through Middle Tennessee State University. I graduated. I got out, couldn't find a job. I hit that wall they call the 70% unemployment rate among the blind. So I got a job making minimum wage. I kept that job for 2 years while I was looking for employment. I eventually got a job working at the Department of Transportation, doing data entry. I went to school on the weekends. I got my master's degree. During that time, I got a promotion doing road safety audits. And that's where planners and engineers get together. They look at a stretch of road that's high risk for fatalities and crashes. and they come up with a plan in order to fix that road, to make it more safer, hopefully to save lives. And I did that for about 20 years, and now I'm working in active transportation, increasing access, increasing safety to pedestrians and bicyclists around the state. But one thing I did when I was in my early 30s is I was introduced to this organization called the National Federation of the Blind, who one of the founding members, Dr. Jernigan, went to, Peabody, and went to Tennessee School for the Blind as well. And one of the things that Dr. Jernigan taught the people who are part of the NFB is, number one, that blindness is not a tragedy. Number two, they taught me that I'm not a broken-sided person. And they also taught me that if you have the proper tools and the proper opportunity, that blindness can be reduced to a mere nuisance. And those are really important things for the psychology of a blind person. But one of the most important things they taught me is the power of collective action. I started getting involved in this little thing called passing laws, writing laws, working with legislators, first on a national level, and was a small part of getting the Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Act passed, which is not very easy to get a law passed up in D.C., I'll tell you that right now, but we did it. Then I started working on state legislation. As blind people, we saw that a lot of parents who are blind around the state were having their children taken away from them, not because they were bad parents, but because they were blind. Blindness is not a tragedy. We also, once we passed and wrote that law to get that fixed, which is not totally fixed, but we don't hear nearly. I think I've heard, that was probably a good 12 years, 14 years ago. I've heard maybe one person or two people have those issues when it was actually all over the state before. We passed another law dealing with higher education that increased the digital, electronic accessibility of digital content of higher education around the state. That's a big deal because that's the way we access information in college nowadays, right? We passed a law and wrote a law having to do with accessible prescriptions. So now blind people can have the same information at the same time about the medicine that they take that the average sighted person has. We also got rid of this little thing called the payment of subminimum wages to people with disabilities. How many of you know that 2 years ago it was legal for a person with a disability to be paid 2 cents an hour? 2 cents an hour. And so the NFB of Tennessee actually helped with that. And so very proud of that. One thing a lot of us, up on this stage have worked on is the ability for on-demand transportation to happen in our city. And that's been one of the biggest life-changing things in my life for the past year and a half. I've never had the freedom of movement to be able to move around the city like I do now. It's almost like I can drive. I kind of can. I mean, I'm not in the driver's seat, but anytime I want to go somewhere, I can pick up my phone, call an Uber, and go, no matter what time it is. If I want to take my granddaughter to school and go to work afterwards, I can do that just as easy as anyone else can. And so, as I wrap up, I just want to tell you all how important the people up on this stage are with me, the people who have mentored me over the years. John Harris was mentioned, Ralph talked. These are people that without them in my lives, I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in the situation where I am now. And so I just want to take this time, Ralph, to thank you. John Harris, I know you're up there in Munford, Tennessee. Buddy, I know you've got dementia, but we love you. And we're still praying for you. I want to say, in closing, that was then, this is now, and we're just getting started. So thank you for having me tonight.
James, thank you. That was really helpful. Very, very informative. Last, batting and cleanup, April Meredith. April is the statewide information and referral coordinator and associate program manager for the Tennessee Disability Pathfinder program. April.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Are you still awake? Ready for one more? Okay, all right, let's wrap this up. Well, my name is indeed April Dawn. And yes, I was indeed born in the month of April and at the crack of dawn. Many have commented that my name is very poetic. I have found this to be quite fitting for my personality, as I often revert to writing poetry as a way for me to process the highs and lows this world and this life offers. My blindness journey began in 2008, sort of. At least that's the year I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. As I came to learn, RP is a genetically inherited eye disease. It's degenerative. This means that I was actually born with this condition. In fact, I was born with so-called perfect 20/20 eyesight. Then, gradually, my eyesight diminished. I started experiencing color blindness in upper elementary school. As a person who loves taking in the vibrant contrasts and spectrum of shades that exist everywhere, I struggled to come to terms with the fact that I continue to vividly see colors in my dreams, but wake up to a virtually colorless world. Here is a poem I wrote on this realization. Dream Palette. The soothing shades of blue, ocean, sky, and royal too. Vibrant pops of orange and yellow for happiness, health, and feeling mellow. Hunter green, teal, and lime, white and gray, which reveal time. Blood red, dark brown, and pitch black. You can put them down, but not take them back. Peachy pink, soft and sweet. Add vanilla cream to top the treat. Purple notes trimmed in gold. Fits kings and queens, both young and old. Mix 2 or 3 to make another. Color cousins from primary mothers. What beautiful discoveries I can find, but trapped within my sleeping mind. Over the next 2 decades, my eyesight weakened, and so did my resolve. Although the age of onset for RP is technically birth, it wasn't until I had experienced substantial sight loss when I finally got my diagnosis in 2008. I was 30, married, pregnant with my second child, and teaching English and culture in Japan. Hearing the news that my condition was irreversible and progressive terrified me at first. The thought of eventually going totally blind left me questioning my worth as a wife, as a mom, as a worker, and as a human. I went to a much darker place psychologically and emotionally than my eyesight would ever become. Thankfully, my faith, my family's encouragement, counseling, blindness skills training right here in Middle Tennessee, and peer support from people like I'm sharing the stage with and who are in the audience and at home supporting me today. That all helped me erase my doubts, regain independence, and restore my soul. Here's my poem describing this spiritual reawakening. In darkness waits. In darkness waits a soul yearning for the light, questing for greatness beyond imagination. Only the soul searches outward, not inward, succumbing to the host's divine complication. teaching her stories and burdens to bear, web of ebony it is ever weaving, grasping for its insignificance, not holding to his purpose, and thoughts of hope begin their leaving, leading her down paths of false promise, ever its trap it is wielding. But acknowledging such inevitable defeat only leads her heart to further yielding. Waiting, always waiting, softly she calls out, longing for his presence to be known. Her darkened spirit asks for a new resolve, beckons the sun back to his home. Like the miracle of birth itself, the sun rises in shades of brilliance untold. This breaks her cloud and the eclipse on her heart, finally shining into the direction where brighter stories may unfold. Truthfully, I am grateful, wholeheartedly grateful for my blindness, the paths on which it has taken me, the people I've encountered, and the person I have become along the way. During this process, I adopted a personal motto by which I now live: losing sight, gaining vision. Losing sight, gaining vision. My spiritual and sensory journey into darkness ultimately led me to have a greater vision for myself and for all those around me. I believe I actually see more clearly now than I did before losing my eyesight. I can better recognize my own potential and that of others. I am more open-minded, empathetic, sensitive, and compassionate. My blindness has made me a better human by broadening my perspective. Now I invite you to consider my point of view as I leave you with one more original poem. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes, and you will find the soles are well worn, having trod countless miles, perhaps before you were even born. Get a taste of my life, and in your mind, it will be bittersweet. Whether it seem more foul or the latter, all depends on where you dare to go in your feet. Stop and smell my roses, but please be kind. I'm aware of the weeds amongst some, for those are my thrivers, with the strongest thorns and sweetest fragrances, my most beautiful blossoms. Look a while from my perspective, a mind's eye view. May you see not a world of fear nor pity, but an adaptive one, with new skills, accessible technology, and limitless possibility. Take a moment to listen with my trained ears and other senses. Don't forget my cane or service animal. They all contribute to my daily successes and truly make us equal. Walk a mile in my shoes, and may you see low expectations left behind, and this life lived as I want, accepting myself as one of the blind. Thank you.
Thank you, April. My goodness. Excellent. You know, this journey with the series Then and Now has been really one about storytelling, and you can hear the richness of these stories, and as Carol mentioned, the tapestry of the different aspects of the lives, but they're all joined in union by their resilience and their coping mechanisms and the ability for them to educate us about life in ways that we probably would have no idea to experience or to know about. So I thank you all very much for coming and sharing that with us. I want to thank Ralph and Carol, Ryan, and Peter and our community leaders on stage, and I thank our audience for coming. We have another episode coming up, our last one of the season, April 8th, and that'll be on our community that has hearing and speech disabilities, impairments, and we're looking to have a nice, robust group and another great set of stories to be shared. Before I close, I want to thank Samara Lee for being my partner in this. I want to thank our team from Rebecca Price's team from the Public Library. I want to thank, of course, I always have to end with thanking Marla Robertson, because if Marla was not involved in this, it wouldn't happen. I couldn't do it. So I thank everybody for coming tonight, though. See you at the next program.